They're not going to wear the masks.
I got it.
Well, by the clock, it's 5 o'clock. We welcome you all here. Gordy told me that this mask improves my looks. And so, and I couldn't argue with him. But we appreciate you all being here. Our opening will be presented by Councilwoman Gina Wortham. So we'll turn the time to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I really love President Ronald Reagan, as some of you probably know. I find a lot of things that he says so inspiring, and I found a quote today I wanted to start with from him that I really liked. Okay, can you hear me now? He said, "Whatever else history may say about me when I'm gone, I hope it will record that I appealed to your best hopes, not your worst fears, to your confidence rather than your doubts. My dream is that you will travel the road ahead with liberty's lamp guiding your steps and opportunity's arm steadying your way." And I'll continue my opening in the form of a prayer. Our Heavenly Father, we are grateful this evening to be able to gather as council members to consider the business of our beloved Cache County. We are grateful to live in this community with so many good people who are loving and kind to others and work to do their best to serve others. We ask Thee, Father, to bless us with wisdom and inspiration as we make decisions for the best of the citizens of this county. We ask Thee also for a blessing upon our nation, a blessing of understanding and of caring hearts reaching out, and a spirit of calmness as we face difficult times with many people upset about things. We ask Thee for Thy help to continue to preserve our freedom and this nation. These things we ask Thee in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gina. Do we have a motion to approve our agenda for tonight?
Move to approve. Second.
All in favor? Aye. Are there any opposed? And a review of the minutes of our last meeting of May 26th. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes?
Move to approve the minutes as written.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Okay, Executive Butters, we have some appointments that to consider tonight. We'll turn the time to you and for your report also.
Yes, thank you. For appointments, we have reappointments to the Solid Waste Advisory Board, and the terms, the expiration dates are listed there for Isa Hammoud, R. Ryan DuPont, John White, Dean Adams, David Erickson, and Jeannie Simmons. And looks like that's all. Jeannie and David Erickson are both non-voting members that are appointed as liaison, one to Dave to Cache County and Jeannie to the Logan City Council. So I would recommend those approvals.
I have a question on that, Craig. Is this the full board?
No, there are also other members of the board, and I don't have the full list of me. The mayors that represent, the three mayors that represent the north end of the valley, and the three mayors that represent the south end of the valley, and myself, and Mayor Daines from Logan. I think that's the the rest of the board, that makes up the rest of the board.
On the,
Okay.
Yeah, John's on the list here as the expertise in agricultural waste, so one of the most prestigious callings that you have is, so.
how'd you get that?
And also on Lloyd Berenson, Janine reminded me.
Okay, do we have a motion to approve the Solid Waste Advisory Board?
I'll move to approve.
Second it.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Thank you.
Okay, and also, we have the newly created Cache County Economic Development Advisory Board. And those board members are Jamie Andrus, David Zook, Kirk Jensen, Brian Carver, Gina Worthen, Bruce Lee, myself, Mark Alexander, Chase Anderson, Vicki Fenton, and Paul Borup. That is basically the Cache Valley Economic Development Alliance Executive Committee, and we have made them also appointed to the Economic Development Board for the county. And so I would recommend also that they be approved to serve in those. And these will all be, well, some of these terms, the code actually requires that some of them serve for 2 years, some for 4 years initially while the committee gets functioning. And so some of them are for 2 years and some of them for 4 years. So.
Any other questions or comments concerning our Economic Development Advisory Board?
Move to approve Cache County Economic Development Advisory Board as stated.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you very much.
We also, you have the May 2020 expense report or the warrant register on the server that you have access to if you have any questions. Be happy to answer those. And I've asked Deputy Bryce Mumford to give a report on the EMS fire study that we're in the midst of doing. And so he's going to do that. And then I was going to kind of give a report on the COVID-19 update, but I'll wait until we get to that item on the agenda before I comment on that. So,
Thank you.
Bryce.
Thank you, Executive Butters. We have received the report. We got it from them on Monday, and they have asked us to have the stakeholder group, particularly the chiefs, Chief Downs, Chief Hanig, and Chief Hammer, to take a look at it for financial accuracy. And so they've asked that we get those changes back to them quickly, and then we should be about ready to distribute the report hopefully early next week. So that's currently where we're at. Happy to have finally received a final draft, and it looks, I believe it looks better than, considerably better than the previous second rough draft. So it looks pretty good. So any questions that I can answer?
You don't have any concerns about it then? You think it's going to address?
Some of the things that, one of my concerns was that it didn't really address how we could hold together the SIMS organization, and this has 4 or 5 key points, I believe, that Logan City has identified that they believe would help them feel more comfortable putting them together. I don't know whether those are tenable or not, but they have at least addressed some of the concerns that Logan City has regarding the SIMS organization and preserving it. And so I think that in and of itself is a big improvement. Additionally, it's reformatted and it flows a little bit better. It's easier to read. So those are 2 or 3 of the reasons I think it's much better than the last one, the last second draft that we received. So,
Thank you. Any other questions for Bryce? Thank you, Bryce.
thank you.
Okay, we don't have any consent items on our agenda tonight. So we'll move on to number 8. It's a review of the 2020 RAPS and restaurant tax awarded funds. And we received some letters, one from Summer Citizens, a letter from the Cache Chamber of Commerce, and one from the Visitors Bureau and Tourism Industry concerning or expressing some concerns. And maybe I'll just preface our discussion by really seconding their concerns on there, particularly as it relates to the Utah Festival Opera Company. They will not be here next year if we don't provide their requested RAPS funds. They just simply cannot exist without those funds. Without the marketing money that they've requested, they won't have the funds to advertise and to bring people in. And without these other funds necessary to keep their programs running through the rest of the year, they just simply don't have another source, and they'll be gone. So with that, I'll open it up to other comments and concerns by council members.
Well, I have a question then about the Utah Festival Opera Company, because they had more than just the $150,000 ask that wasn't given, and I wonder if those on the RAPS committee can talk about those other, I think there were 2 requests. Maybe Carl, you're familiar with them. If we need to add those back in, or if we only need to add back in the $150,000.
Well, the other 2 were the Utah Theater programs and Utah Theater marketing. Again, they are required in order to keep the thing running. They just simply don't have another source of funding for that. The marketing is very critical, and the summer festival and educational programs are critical. They can't continue to offer those and operate those without that funding. So really, I would encourage us to approve their original requests to keep them alive, because they are a significant part of what brings tourism into our valley during the summer months. And I think Julie and Jamie both pointed out in their letters that they are the major source of tourism travel in our valley, in our county during those months, and even for the whole year.
I don't know, it seems to me I've heard that same story 2 years ago,
Yeah.
3 years ago.
And we had to help them. They, having worked with them and worked on their board, I can assure everybody that they operate a very tight ship. There's just isn't any waste at all.
Am I to understand that all of their large donors have went away where they're not gonna have a season?
Yeah. Yep.
So all the people that was planning on donating, that have donated in the past, have pretty well dried up and said, no program, no money. So now they're coming and saying, all of our other money streams have dried up. We need your help, I guess is what I'm reading.
Well, this is really basically the same thing they asked for last year. And we helped them out, I think, 100% last year, their request.
Are they planning on, with all of this money they're requesting, they're planning on doing summer programs and that, which is probably already canceled too?
No, the summer programs are still being offered. Under the restrictions, of course, social distancing and the yellow, our yellow status. Those summer programs will still operate.
So you were specifically talking about, Carl, number 73, number 74, I'm sorry, 74 and 75, right? 15,000 for the theater program and 5,000 for the marketing, right?
Yeah, that's for Utah Theater specifically, but then number 72, their summer festival and educational programs. They need that funding too.
The full amount,
Uh-huh.
the 300 rather than the 175. We don't have enough to do that, do we?
Well, we got 900,000 extra.
I have a question. What are all these, the Center for the Arts, and where do they fit in? And the ballet, and we're giving 165,000 for different things like that.
Yeah, that's separate from Utah Festival Opera. And that's not part of the opera. Those are separate organizations. And I can't address their situations at the present time, what their costs are and what their ongoing costs would be. I just don't know.
The one challenge that we got is the money, of course, is there because it's where, we allocate what came in from last year. But this next year with no revenue stream coming in, there will be very, very little RAPS money. And so we can give it away
Yeah.
now and they can have nothing next year. Unless we want to raise taxes to the citizens to cover what we've been doing with the RAP.
We're in a tough situation. We are.
We give all the money, we held back, here's how I can see the committee held back quite a bit of money to
Go
we're not
toward
gonna
next
have
year,
next year.
yep.
And so we're requesting the full amount next year, the money won't be there to request. So
I think the hope is, though, that...
what is their
that,
plan for next year when the pot of money is completely depleted, don't even exist?
Well, the stepping up of donors with the season going on, I think is their plan. And it's, again, it's just simply a function of if we don't provide this needed funding, they just simply won't be here. So, I mean, it's...
Last year in marketing, they requested they received 125,000. This year, they bumped it up and requested 150,000. Yes, the 125,000. We were also curious where there was nothing was able to occur this summer. That 125,000.
Well,
Is there anything left of that?
well, it went for their marketing because they were planning on a season.
Yeah.
Marketing gone now, right?
Yeah,
Because
I
of
mean, it's
COVID.
spent because of marketing. I mean, they marketed heavily for the season, but,
Yeah, my understanding is they already spent that money because that's what I understood, that they spent it already.
And I'm assuming
Contracts
everybody
and
that
stuff.
they marketed was planning on coming here, and
Yeah.
it was the shutdown of the whole America because of this, so they weren't able to come. It's not their fault. They did the marketing, they had the people in line. Other circumstances come along. I'm just looking ahead and saying, you didn't raise any money, you want all the money now to keep everything going. Next year, there won't be any money because those people didn't come to town. I don't know what the answer's gonna be.
I would think the marketing money would be for next season, to
well,
market
yeah,
next season.
that's what it
Isn't
is.
that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah.
Part of it is they already had 40,000 brochures printed and ready to mail out. And I'm sure that they each cost $1. That's probably $40,000 worth of materials they had to throw away.
Ouch.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a sad situation.
it's really sad.
You, as council members, will need to look ahead for next year because we're gonna have to deal with the budget for next year with no money. At
That-
least, you'll still have your property tax, but you won't have who knows where we're gonna be, but it's gonna be down.
Well, the RAP stat, that's gonna
Yeah, that's
be
gonna
down
be
for
gone.
sure. That's down.
That'll be gone. Yep, that'll
General
be
budget,
down.
myself, I wouldn't fund it out of general budget, sorry.
Oh, well, I don't disagree there.
I don't think we'll fund it next year out of general budget. We're not gonna raise taxes, so what can we do this year so that we got some money to give them next year? I mean, if corporate isn't gonna come forth and do anything, I haven't heard what Logan City's doing and how they're dealing with the same question. But is Logan City step forward and gonna give them their full amount? Does anybody know?
I don't know if Logan City donates anything directly.
Whenever they talk to us, they don't mention.
I don't think they do.
We basically sent out after we got all the applications, we even sent out again saying, hey, is your event going to happen? You know what, are you, not if you're gonna invest in it all and everything right now, no, is it gonna happen? And we had a lot of them that came back and says, no, it's not gonna happen, but we still want the money. You know, we still want the money, and you're sitting there going, we're taking taxpayer money. And you just really send it out not knowing so much? Do we wait till something more solid comes by to really say, hey, this is an investment for $1, or do we just send it out and once it's gone, you know, it's applied for, or excuse me, it's sent, they can basically use it up, and then if we dry up again next year, that was taxpayer money that got dried up. So, and that's why all of these that didn't have events going on, we did cut them back, and we tried to give them enough to where they could at least administratively keep going. I don't know about as far as the marketing. I know there's 2 of them under Utah Festival Opry, the Utah Theater Programs, $15,000. That was a new application this year, brand new one, and those things weren't happening. And I wasn't sure on the number 2 there. There was 2 of them, Utah Theater Marketing. I think that was a new application this year. And so we just, you know, with so much unknown, it's hard to commit funds to something that is a big maybe right now anyway.
That's true, but it's always been my contention, though.
So to me, I'm a little worried about
that-
gambling with taxpayer money right now.
Well,
Unless we can wait for them to maybe develop a process later, you know, as something more solid develops.
It's always been my contention, though, that we should try and invest these RAPS funds into venues that will increase our tax base in RAPS, which comes from visitations, hotel rooms and restaurants and things like that. And that should be our primary investment focus for these funds. And then with what we garner over and above these venues that use these to bring visitors in, then we have that opportunity to fund some other recreational needs in our county, you know, like White Pine Park and other things like that, which we wouldn't have the money for if we didn't have these venues that bring visitors into our valley. And so that's, in my mind, that's where the primary focus of our investment of RAPS funds ought to be.
So Carl, you're saying you don't think people who live in the county eat in the restaurants?
Oh, of course they do.
Well, then that's,
Yeah.
I think more than 50% of the money, I think most of the money, they come here for 3 months. The rest of the people eat, you know, in Cache Valley, you got 2 things to do, go to a movie or go out to dinner. There's nothing else to do. So I can guarantee you most of the restaurants are filled with people that live in Cache Valley, not just these guys. And
Agreed.
secondly, could you explain to me, someone, I don't care whom, the summer festival and educational programs, what are they gonna be? Are we gonna meet? I know they have summer baseball and summer basketball, but no spectators can come. What are these people gonna be doing that come to the educational stuff in the summer? Where are they gonna come from if they can't meet?
Well, I can't answer that, except to tell you that it does continue through the summer, and they are planning a full program.
The only other thing.
Details I can't.
Yeah, I don't know what they're gonna do.
You mentioned it just a little bit. We had proposed with lots and lots of different requests for building of parks, expanding parks, doing all that. Are we thinking that we should put that all off for a year to keep these other things going? There's gotta be a give and a take here somewhere. If you're gonna give the same amount to the Festival Opera and all of that, you're gonna have to take it from someone else. Or there will be no money for next year, and we need to decide that at council.
I think it's important that the opera have its advertising budget. I think that's really critical. But maybe we can ask them to be a little more reserved in the way they do it and not give them 150, but maybe 120 or something like that.
Yeah.
And they could get donations from somewhere else, or maybe they could go less fancy, I don't know, like do matte instead of glass. I mean, just ways to save money so that we can have some for next year. But they do bring a lot of revenue, and the Summer Citizens too. And that email that we got today from their director says that they put in $5 million into our economy, and I think that's significant. So I'd like to see us fund those. I think that we should do that, but maybe not exactly what they ask. Be a little bit more reserved.
I'm not quite understanding, you're talking about donors can't do it this year?
They aren't doing it this
They
year.
aren't doing it?
No.
Why would they do it next year? Is it because they say that the programs are canceled? Or is it, from what I'm understanding, these funds are for next year, correct?
Yeah, well, and to carry the advertising is for next year, advertising and promotion. The summer festival and educational programs are for this year,
Yeah.
and we'll fund those programs. Utah Theater, of course, is ongoing in what it does.
So if some of this is for next year, why can't some of those donors step up this year to fund next year?
Well, again, I don't have any interaction at all with donors, so I don't
And
know.
I understand that too, because if they wait till next year, then what they're doing is funding 2022, right?
Yeah.
What's the thought that I've just had? I'll share it with you. Do we need to send everybody back to the application thing and say, we want you to resubmit your application, and we want you to cut it down to the bare bones, knowing that there's not going to be hardly any money the following year? Is that a thing that we should do? But I mean, if you got the Festival Opera and all the other places say we just absolutely can't operate unless we have the full amount, well, how are they going to operate the next year when there's none?
Well, I hear what you're saying, and I think certainly giving the full amount probably isn't the prudent thing to do. And maybe that's a good idea. I don't know where our reps. There she is. What would be the implications of doing what Gordy suggested? And
That's a really lot of work.
Yeah.
yeah.
That is redoing the whole process.
Start over is a really big deal. I would really vote, let's pass on that. We have gone back and asked them, what are your plans? What are you still going to do? What are your needs? And we really only had a few that stepped it back at all. So they still wanted the full funding, even though there's no programs going on. So we tried to temper that with what they were asking, and, we gave them a little bit more this year for their educational programs. Last year, we gave the festival $300,000, I believe,
Yeah.
combined. And I understand they've already spent that advertising dollar, probably not all of it, though, because you don't spend all of it up front. It's kind of a continuing through the summer is what I thought. For the festival, we have, the way that we did it for restaurant fund, we really only have $37,000 left in restaurant funds. So you could give that, but then you're done in that category. You could up that award for the programming. You could up that, maybe $25,000. That would still give them, that's quite a bit of money to operate, and we really looked at their operating expenses so that they could continue to go. So, but then with the Utah Theater, they've never asked for money before. This is a new kind of venue, and even in projected income, they didn't need us. So that was kind of a consideration that we're not ready to start something new if they don't need us. And that was kind of what came through in their application. So, the summer citizens, I don't know, that one, they didn't really want to fund that because you're not getting anybody to come this year. So I get that they went out, you know, if you want to fund part of that, you could. In the cultural, under the cultural wraps, we could do some there. But it's up to the committee entirely.
Now, my question to you is if we can't get by without this amount of money, how are you gonna do it next year? I can promise you, I'm on the council next year, and I will not raise property taxes for this. You know,
Well, I don't think any of us, at least me, using funds, anything other than RAPS should
okay,
not be used.
Next year, let's think about the wraps. You know, if you look at the information that's coming from the restaurants and the motels and all that, hey, it is very, very skinny. So it's not gonna be there next year. So now, do we just throw the money as it's been asked and then deal with it next year, or do we wanna do something about it this year? You know, it's up to the council, and, the money's not gonna be there next year.
I think we should make a decision one way or the other. I don't think it's fair to ask the committee to meet again. I mean, they did a wonderful, as good as they can do.
Oh, with what information they had.
Yeah, and I don't think that's fair, and
And we're seeing that nobody wants to back off what they've submitted.
Well, there were a few. There were a few that really looked at it and say, you know, we can keep our organization going with this much, and they, you know, and they're very honest and forthwith, and then others just flat out says, we need everything.
Yeah.
And,
What about the lyric?
excuse me,
Oh,
we want
sorry.
everything.
Sorry, Dave. What about the Lyric Theater? There was, give them 5, but some of the other theater programs got more. I know they had to cancel their season, but had they already advertised? I wondered if we should give them a little bit more to help them out for next year. And number 52, I think.
Mr. Chairman, could I just kind of weigh in here?
Yeah, please.
And Betty, I'm going to ask you, last year we awarded application for marketing to many of these organizations. And I'm wondering if there's still funds available that were awarded last year that have not been invoiced or applied for. For example, the Festival Opera, Summer Citizens, because if they're using this year's award for next year's marketing, there's a possibility that in last year's award, they didn't use the full amount for this year's marketing. So there is a chance that we could go back and look in the budget for those awards from last year. And I know it would be more work for Betty to chase those funds down, but there may be some of these organizations that still have balance in those awards that were awarded last year that we could kind of go back and say, you still have this much. We're not going to award you your full ask for the coming year. So that's another option. If you would like to do that, we could postpone it another. Are you willing to do that, Betty? Just kind of some of these organizations. Yes.
I did have one more comment. Cameron looked at the income for the first quarter. February was down for restaurant tax, but January and March were still the same as last year. They were still fairly high. Now, I expect those numbers won't continue through the summer because we won't have that influx. But we still have money still being generated for the restaurant and wraps. It just will not be as much. So it won't dry up, but it will be less.
Yeah.
Is what we're anticipating.
That's a good point.
Betty, I
Well,
have a,
as we all know, January and February and March wasn't right in the middle of what happened. That was still fairly good movement of people.
Yeah.
April, May, June,
The second quarter will be the,
absolutely the worst.
yeah.
Betty, do you, and I don't know if you know this, but Do you usually have the invoices by this time of what they've spent? I mean, I'm wondering if there's invoices that they haven't submitted yet for that funding that's left over.
There are. We don't always have them by this time of year. Some aren't in that big of a hurry to be reimbursed, and others are. I don't know specifically who at the moment, but there is money that they haven't applied for that they could use. I mean, it is reimbursing what they've already spent, but money that still could help keep them afloat.
Okay. Thank you.
There's one other thing I know on the committee itself. There was a lot, like you say, there's a lot of unknown. There's a lot of, well, do we, where do we, if you put this money toward this, something still may not happen, it just may disappear, and it was, the advertising went out there, or marketing went out there, and it was just, but nothing happened. We don't know that, okay? And that's why I know with the committee, we had several discussions about why we funded some of these hard assets, these things that were solid, that no matter what happens, they're going to be built. They're going to be there for 30 years or 50 years or 100, I don't know, 100 years. On a lot of these different items, we did fund things that actually would still be around no matter COVID or not.
Well,
Which I thought.
They're getting used now. People are
Right.
using parks. People are using trails.
You know,
Because
and-
they can't go anywhere else.
And so a lot of those thoughts came to the committee. We discussed a lot of that stuff, and so, it's really hard. It was really hard for me to sit there and go, okay, do you put money to the unknown, or do you put money to the known that does have some solid application to it, that will help people for sure now? That discussion was also had amongst the committee as to why, for example, when you said White Pine Park and things like that, they were things that were going to be tangible, that they could be built, and that they would be an asset for a long, long time.
Well, again, I think I'll just come back to the driver, particularly as it relates to hotels, and to a good extent, restaurants too, are the venues that bring people from the outside in to use these things. And so if we can do something to make sure that these entities survive through this period of time, I think it's important that we do that. And maybe, Betty? Yes.
I didn't mean to interrupt. I know that Julie has, with the Visitors Bureau, has talked about there is some money to help. So that is another avenue we could seek some additional funding if, we wanted to pull that direction.
Okay. Well, maybe we need a little more time to,
Let's scour the records and
see
see
what,
what money is not
yeah.
used, what money's available. And see what holes we can fill.
One thing as I look at this, as far as kind of the decision-making that we got to do right now, I think first of all, to what Dave was saying, we want to fund people that have the fixed costs, that regardless of what happens, they're going to have these ongoing fixed costs. So you want to look to those first, the ones that have variable costs that can pull back. We want to be able to do that. And then to John's point about how most of this tax money probably is paid by the citizens of Cache County. So as I looked at that and I said, as far as we bump the funding up for the Festival Opera, that would come to 13% of the overall what we're spending in RAPS money. And a lot of the people that attend the Festival Opera are citizens of the valley, so it does help them, but it is also a big driver for tourism. So I don't think that's a completely unreasonable thing to fund them. Some of the other projects that we're funding, the parks and things, I looked at how many pickleball courts were out there, and I think that's going to drive a lot of influx into the valley. Those pickleball tournaments, you look at other communities, they really drive a lot of tourism, a lot of people that come into the valley and will spend some money in restaurants and maybe hotels. So that's a very wise thing to fund from a tourism standpoint, as well as a quality of life standpoint for the people that are here. And then in addition, looking at some of the other festivals and things, the different theaters, I think we want to continue to fund them because as things open up and we try to push that, that's going to help us as community. It might not drive a whole lot from outside into the valley, but I think people are really hungering to get out and do a few things. So it'd be wise to fund them as well. And then just to the standpoint, if we give them money right now, what happens next year? I know in working with them and some of the other theater companies and trying to leverage corporate donors, they want performance or they pull. So if you had Zions come in and say, hey, we'll sponsor this season, and the season doesn't happen, they don't give you the money. So when I partner with a company and try to fund something, they'll say, okay, we'll commit to this money, but we need to see that the advertisements were actually sent out, that the play actually happened, and then you can get the reimbursement. So I think there'll be some money there next year. And if the festival has time, those theaters have some time to adjust, I believe they can do that into next year, even if the funds are a lot lower than they are now. They just didn't have time to make any adjustments, and they're sitting on a big nut and stuff that's already been spent. So we need to help them now, as well as signal that, hey, next year where the funds are depleted, they at least have time to make those adjustments.
Good thoughts.
Okay, let me ask you, are there any of those items that you feel maybe were overfunded?
The only thing that I could see, and that is some of these parks and recreational things, they could be put off a year, and it would make some people mad, but they could be put off for a year and just be funded a following year. I think you could go through and maybe look them over, take that money and do some of it.
What about the airport? Could we put that runway off here? Do we have to do that right now?
Yeah, that airport is tied to some, that's an investment of,
That's a match.
match.
Oh, that's a match, okay.
They come in with millions of dollars on top of that.
Okay.
And those opportunities, if we walk away from that one would really hurt. That would be a killer.
I think some of those parks, like you were saying, you look at some of them that maybe would drive a little bit more activity where everybody loves a trail, but maybe you can dial back a little bit of money on some of those trails and pick up. I mean, if we're looking to say, hey, we want to fund a theater that maybe now that can't perform currently, but is really itching to, and if we can get some things going, we can give them a little bit more and maybe take away $5,000 or $10,000 from a trail that we've committed $100,000 to, and help something that's going to put on some performances and drive some restaurant stuff. That'd be great to do.
Good thought, Paul. Also, a lot of these things that are funded, they don't happen the year you fund them. It might take a year or so before they can get everything in line. If you go back and look at the funds that have been awarded over the last 3 years, there's still quite a bit of money sitting there waiting for them to get the project all the way underway.
Mm-hmm. These are really good thoughts. And Betty, if you can pull some numbers together for us and send them out to us so we can get an idea of what is yet to be spent and funded. And then maybe we can look all of this over and come back with some concrete thoughts. John?
Could you also, so do we have how much RAPS money, and how much money comes in each month in 2019? Do we know it by a monthly?
I don't know, I only have tables.
I think we can do, I can probably find.
I'd like to know that. Then you can say, well, it might improve here because now we're half restaurants or.
I can get the quarter.
Quartered work, if you could, please.
How far are we away from the quarter totals for April, May, and June? Or June's just barely here, but,
Yeah, we've got the June, or the second quarter tax probably won't come out till August. It takes
we're
about
about
2
3
months
months behind
for
then.
the state to get that back to us.
But we could see last year's.
Yeah.
Is there ways that we could pass this RAPS awarded funding right now as is, subject to additions within the next 2 months as we look at more? Is there a way that we can get some of these
Council can pretty much do whatever.
projects going and stuff? Because there is a remaining portion of that that is unallocated.
Well,
We have to work with.
the only issue I would have with that is that we've got there was suggestions made about some of these, for example, awards for trails that could be moved back.
Getting ready for
And,
it to go now.
And,
Well, I think that's great, because I hate trails, but I sure think more people walk on trails right now than they're sitting at the opera.
but
I mean, I hate that, everybody knows what's been awarded. I mean, it's on here, people know that they got their awards. Now we're gonna say, oh, sorry, we're gonna cut you back. This is a
Yeah,
public
that's
record.
hard.
Just as a FYI, on this third page, that Logan City Parks and Recreation, that consular property, that's the same thing as the airport. It's a grant thing that they're waiting for also.
Our portion of that investment brings in, you know, basically completes that conservation easement.
I think it's over 800,000.
Yeah, 800,000, so.
Well, can we approve those? Those
Well-
that, like that? I guess it's hard to take away from the others though, isn't it?
That's,
That's
so
the challenge.
if we start digging in this, that's fine. We can do, you know, the council, we can change any of it. But as you do, then you're gonna be taking from some and giving to others. And there needs to be some, to me, a pretty good basis as to why we do that.
Well, you guys have thought it through, you've spent a lot of time researching it. So, you've done a good job with it, it's just that we got some challenges still now that it's out among the public.
I personally would rather take from some reserve if we have to. I'm not saying the whole amount there, and whatever maybe's not been spent, but I don't feel good about taking it from someone else to give to someone.
That's,
Yeah, yeah.
So,
I think the RAPS committee did a really thoughtful job and appreciate their work. This is a hard year and hard things, and appreciate the thought process that you guys went through.
maybe what we should do is we should pass it the way it's presented, and then continue to go back and see what money's in reserve, what money is available, and make a second allocation down the road.
Betty, how do you feel about that? Is that something very workable, that we can, you know, that we will have that allocated portion, we can come back and as we relook at those and get those numbers back and then add to if, you know, if it's warranted?
We
I
know
think,
that,
to me, that shows some progress. I think we're gonna just be spinning our wheels in a lot of different things and unless we start, you know, moving on
let's
some
look
of
at
this.
fund and reserve, funds that haven't been used, and then that's
And,
maybe,
and even the unallocated portion here that we then will not have for next year.
that's considered funds in reserve.
And the committee did send that, you know, did specifically say, hey, we have that portion that's unallocated because of the situations that we're talking about, things you've explained, all these things, we want the council to really have to vet that also and to, have say in that, because that's gonna be a big theme for next year.
I think we also need to realize that it's gonna be an interesting next year, you know. Anyway, Mr. Chairman, to move this along, I would make a motion that we go ahead and pass the RAPS as it's been presented to us by the committee, and then go ahead after it's passed and look over some reserve balances in some other places that the RAPS money is possibly available, and then do maybe a second allocation.
I'll second that.
The motion's been made and seconded. Would you consider an amendment to the motion? I'll be honest with you, I am.
Careful, Carl.
I know, but I am deeply concerned about the survival of the opera company. Deeply concerned.
We will take that under advisement, and that's where we'll look to possibly use some of the funds in reserve or some funds that's unallocated.
Well, what do we have in reserve and what's been unallocated right now? I mean, going into that, if we're gonna look at that, how much are we looking at?
This year, you have, 428,000 that is remaining.
Is in,
Has not been allocated.
okay.
In different categories,
Different
in different
categories.
where they
categories.
fit.
Okay.
The most remains in the cultural and botanical funds, under the RAPS part. So under the advertising, which primarily comes under the restaurant funds, it's small. But you could allocate more in the cultural to the festival, but we can do that after.
Well, my amendment was going to be to add 100,000 for marketing and promotion for the opera and raise their educational program to 200 from 175. So that would be adding 125,000.
From one,
Unless we switch some things around, there's only 37,000 left in promotional. So you could up it in the other category, in the cultural arts, so you could up the 175 more than that, but you don't have a lot of room to wiggle. You have 37,000 in the promotional.
So if I'm understanding that right, if we're looking at it from the Out of Valley Marketing Promotion, they had requested 150. Carl, you were suggesting 100 in that bucket.
Yeah, right.
But we only have 37 to go in that bucket. So if we drop 37 in that bucket, we can then make up the difference between 137, hate doing math in public. $63,000, right? We can then juice the, just the educational program piece by the 63 plus the additional, because that would be in that 400 and some thousand bucket, easily.
Yeah, that bucket has 313,000 in it. So that's doable.
I'm still not clear on why they need more for that particular item if they've had to cancel stuff for their summer program. What?
They haven't canceled anything for the summer program.
They haven't canceled
Haven't
anything
canceled
for their summer education
Right.
program.
They have not.
So when does the summer education program begin?
It starts this month.
Is that gonna be permitted?
As far as I know.
I'd like to have somebody from there say how that's going to work. I mean, every other summer program I know of has been canceled.
Well, I can't answer that.
I know, but we can we got 2 weeks, if what Gordy's,
I would say that we keep the motion as it is and second it, and let's give us 2 weeks to do some more work on it.
question on the motion.
Yes.
Oh, we called the question.
Oh, called question?
That means vote.
Okay. All right, motion's been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? I'll say nay.
I'm not comfortable
I'm not even,
proving everything yet.
so,
How did you vote, Paul?
nay.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, everybody.
So that does give us leeway we can add
We can,
in
can add the motion.
unallocated portions and everything.
That's right.
Okay, I think that's wise.
Okay. And Betty, if you can get some numbers together for us still, we'd appreciate that.
Betty, I have one other question while we're on that. Do we have any outstanding amounts that people haven't, or entities that were awarded haven't been allocated yet?
You mean they haven't asked for them?
Yeah, or they haven't finished them, or they're still outstanding? Could we get a report of that if that's not too much trouble? Okay.
Betty, do they have 2 years
2 years.
to use those funds?
So the funds that are awarded this year would have to be used by the end of 2022.
Correct.
And I think it would be wise that we look at the allocated money for everybody through the years to see how much has not been used. Because in times past, there's quite an amount of money that they've been awarded it. They go way past what they are supposed to, and we've tried to make them not make an application if they aren't, ready to go.
I think several of those are sent, I believe they are sent letters. or on the follow-up, I believe, that say, hey, you know, your 2 years is up and we have not received any kind of invoices or something.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden we see them, I don't know if we've had a few that come in here and say, hey, can you give us a day and a half? Can you give us 6 months or something, you know? And we've approved some of those.
We're pretty kind. We aren't mean day people, but
Maybe this is the year we take it back and put it somewhere else.
one thing that
Stick by the rule.
I remember in years past, there was one allocation to one of the cities that went on for about 7 years, and they were waiting to get the property. It seemed to me like there was a widow that had to die or something before they could do the project. And, you know, if that project isn't ready to go, let's wait until that year, you know, the year that it needs and it's ready to go, and then do it. But that might be a little fictitious.
The lady dies at shovel ready. Saying?
No, they reallocated for another project.
Good, good.
Okay, well, we're past the time for our public hearing. We have item number 9A, tourism report. And are you here to present that to us? Oh, okay.
But do you want to do the public?
I was going to say, let's do the public hearings first, and we'll put that tourism report off.
So about what time will that be for her, so I can let her know? The nation's still between 5 and 5:30.
Probably around 6:15 or so. Okay, we have a public hearing for ordinance 2020-07, the North Pine Canyon Ranch rezone. And so, Chris, if you'll give us a brief review of what we're going to be discussing.
I'll do that. This is ordinance 2020-07. This is a North Pine Canyon Ranch rezone. It's a request to rezone approximately 42 acres from the FR40 zone to the A10 zone. This is on 2 separate parcels of property just outside of Wellsville to the west. What's being proposed is, because those 2 parcels have both A10 and FR40 zone on their property, it makes it difficult for the property owners and also for staff to work through the process to determine how much density they get on the property. So what they're requesting is the remainder of both of those parcels is rezoned from FR40 to A10. From the past councils, when you're making that change from FR40 to A10 zone, one thing we do look at is what is the ground currently being used as and what has it historically been used as. So you'll notice on those properties, there's a good portion of that has functioned as A10 or agriculture over the last 50 plus years. There's also a portion that is not, that's very much could be pasture, but it's very steep areas. It's not buildable. And so even though if it were rezoned to the A10 zone, it could not be built upon, it would not calculate into their development potential. So while you may rezone that, all you're really doing is making it simpler to calculate for what the remainder of the subdivision would be considered for development potential, or for, excuse me, not for development potential, for development, because of those other hazards that exist on the area on the furthest west portion of that property. So again, you're looking at steep slopes, you're looking at source water protection. There's a number of things there that would make it difficult to rezone. Having reviewed that, the Planning Commission held their public hearing, received comment there. They made a recommendation to the council unanimously to recommend approval. They have specified conclusions there that support that analysis, and I'm happy to take questions beyond that if the council has them during the public hearing or later on through initial consideration.
Thank you. This is a public hearing. We'll open it now to public comment. If you desire to comment about this particular item, we ask you to come to the microphone, state your name, and we'll give you an opportunity to speak at this time.
No?
I'm Jarvis Mon. I am one of the landowners of the one of those parcels that Chris mentioned. And obviously, I'm in favor of that rezone to rezone to A10. It makes sense because the commission actually mentioned, or Chris has mentioned, I think before, that the commission doesn't want to have issues where there's a split zone with parcels of land, and so it just makes sense to zone it all into A10 so that as landowners we can do with it what we want in relation to having following whatever the any kind of a future development would be required by the county. We still have to abide by all of the the ordinances and restrictions that we'd have to develop that property anyway, whether it's an A10 or FR40. So we would really like it to be zoned into A10. There's potential for perhaps a house on one of those parcels that now only allows a cabin, and whether you build a cabin or a house, you're still going to affect that property the same way theoretically. So we would appreciate it if you could approve that request.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone else on this agenda item? Okay, we'll,
Close public hearing.
thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Our next public hearing item is ordinance 2020-08, Pinnacle Estates LLC rezone. Chris, again, give us just a brief summary.
Yes. The Pinnacle Estates LLC rezone ordinance 2020-08. This is located just west of Mendon. 1400 South, I believe, is a county road. This is approximately a 30-acre parcel. They're requesting to rezone it from the agricultural A10 zone to the rural 2 or RU2 zone. The important piece, there's a few important pieces here. This would increase the potential number of lots from 2 to 3 to 17. So there's a significant jump in the density from that perspective. The Planning Commission reviewed this and held their public hearing. In their review and consideration of the request, they determined that a recommendation for denial was appropriate. They've identified, I believe there's 4 conclusions there. They added an additional conclusion that reflects the comments from Mendon City. There's also been, as a little bit of a backstory there, a request to Mendon by the property owner to annex into the city, and that request was denied. There were concerns that are, again, specified in that letter from Mendon City about the nature of the roads that are in the area and the potential flooding, and also culinary water supply being a challenge.
Chris, is there a map? I don't see a map here.
Yeah.
Yeah, there should be a map in there.
Well, we got the map, but we didn't get the
What didn't you get?
details.
Yeah.
We didn't get
What are
the
you missing?
planning. We didn't get the planning.
The one from it's in last time's meeting.
Okay. So go back to
Yeah, so
last
go
year.
back to your archive and you can find it in there.
Okay. Okay, I don't know. Are you missing
The one that has like
this map?
Planning Commission said and
Oh, the staff report.
the
We got
staff
staff
report.
report, we don't have that yet.
Didn't get put in our,
We have it.
There.
We got 2 pages and one of them's not a map.
So you're missing this page.
Have to go to last meeting.
go to last meeting.
526, it's in that one.
Yeah.
My apologies then. I'm going to blame it on coronavirus. Is that fair?
I'll totally take that.
It should be in there, so my apologies.
So they work for you too, huh?
Yeah. Not sure why that didn't show up. This is a property that they've been working to develop for some time. I think the challenge from the Planning Commission's perspective here is it didn't feel like a good match for the level of density that was being proposed. As the commission discussed it, typically when they've allowed or considered or recommended approval for these RU2 zones or even RU5 zones, the maximum typical number of lots is maybe 8. And so when they see 17, it raises some red flags about being able to capably maintain or support that type of use, especially when the adjacent city is opposed to such an increase when they'll bear most of that burden from a traffic or impact standpoint. So the Planning Commission took that comment from the city very seriously and also had their own concerns and made those noted in those conclusions. And again, I'm happy to address questions later as you need.
Thank you, Chris. This is a public hearing, so we'll now open it to public comment. If there's anyone who desires to address this issue, please come forward and state your name into the microphone.
Hi, my name's Andrew Lillywhite. I'm attorney for Pinnacle Estates LLC, and Tom Hill's the engineer, and he's going to address any engineering issues. So first of all, Pinnacle Estates owns 30 acres, so of course at, I think it was stated 17 lots, actually would only allow 15 lots, 2-acre density, which fits in with the purpose of the RU2 zone. In the report in the staff report, it mentions that RU2 is meant to be done next to municipalities, and so this is really a use that's intended for the RU2 zone. I'd also like to note too that the letters from Mayor Buis are his words. They aren't necessarily voted on by a city council. They did vote to reject annexation, which could have its own purposes, which may differ from opposing a county development. For one thing, they don't have to provide services. They don't have to provide sewer, water, so on. So this development would be responsible for its water, its septic tanks. Also, I think that a lot of the opposition from Mendon City is a lack of confidence in its own and the county's development standards. This is just a rezone. Next will be a subdivision application. In that, you'll be able to impose exactions and restrictions to ensure that the standards are there to protect the interests of the county and the interests even of Mendon City. But the rezone process is merely a beginning to enable the landowner to exercise their development rights. I'd also like to note too that Mendon City has had a moratorium basically since 2017. Moratorium is allowed in 6-month intervals, maximum of 3 terms. And to me, it feels like Mendon City is just trying to abdicate its own responsibility to provide its infrastructure. It's also, I think, imperative that we protect the property rights of the owner of the property and allow for development to occur. There's a housing shortage, as the governor has indicated, and as the state legislature has provided incentives to overcome. I've experienced that myself. I began my practice in Salt Lake City. Found the housing was very much too expensive. I moved here about 3 years ago, and since the housing prices have risen, from my observation, 50 to 100,000 per home since I've been here. I know when I was looking at lots to purchase, I talked to Jack Nixon, and he said, well, you can buy it now at 70,000, or if you wait till January, it'll be 80,000 because the market is going up. And the way to combat housing shortages and housing overpricing is supply. So you have your basic economics, supply and demand. And I know it's awesome to be able to preserve agriculture, and we live in a valley full of agriculture, but there are also kids, and even if you live on a farm, I can almost guarantee that most of your kids don't live on a farm, and most of them don't live on your farm especially. And so there has to be some development somewhere. Mendon City's been locked up for a long time. This actually would not really create any burden on Mendon City that it shouldn't be bearing already. There's some mention of some roads that they have that are not up to their own standards, which it seems like they should make that happen. But bringing in Pinnacle Estates, this development, part of it would be, of course, we'd expect that the developer would create a road that is up to the county standards. So that objection in the from the planning commission really shouldn't have much sway, in my opinion. And then you have extension of services. The services to be extended are snow plowing about a quarter mile of road. That doesn't seem excessively burdensome on the county. To me, it seems like an ideal place for county development to occur, where it's such a little burden on the county compared to other locations. And Mendon City is not going to have to go up there and plow. It's county development. They don't have to provide water or sewer. And then we also have the issue of the Resolution 2015-20, which does restrict expansion on, it says expansion of road services on substandard roads that do not already serve existing homes. This serves an existing home. The property owners have their home on there, and so it is not, it falls under the reading of Resolution 2015-20. I know the county's been looking at changing that resolution or updating it because it was enacted about 5 years ago and is kind of acting like a moratorium and is probably antiquated and needs addressed. But the plain terms of the resolution seem to me to imply that it fits under the exceptions there. Anyway, maybe if Tom, you can talk about the engineering.
So even though this is just a rezoning, I think it's good to talk about some of those development concerns because we do have answers to them. The property owner did spend a decent amount of money doing some investigations of the groundwater there. They did drill a test well. They were able to get 30 gallons per minute from the test well, which would be adequate for this development. Again, like Andrew said, once we came to development review, we could review the need for a tank or other infrastructure. That well also had good recovery, which indicates that it shouldn't have any long-lasting negative impacts on aquifers nearby, and had water that was under the contaminant levels, maximum contaminant levels required. And then the other concern that I wanted to address was they have current flooding that comes through the property. The developer, or the owner, I should say, isn't responsible for existing conditions, but only for the conditions which they cause by impervious surfaces. And so they would be putting in the infrastructure to the Cache County stormwater standards, which is to hold the 90th percentile storm, as well as have storage either with discharge or without discharge for the 100-year storm. So it wouldn't add any foreseeable impacts on the flooding. Present flooding conditions may continue, but like I said, that shouldn't be the property owner's current problem. And I'll be available for any other engineering questions if they arise. So,
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public who would like to address this issue? Okay. Do we
close the public hearing?
Second.
Motion made to close the public hearing and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Okay, let's see if we can get, next on the agenda is our tourism report. Let's see if we can get Julie on the phone. I may need some help in knowing how to use this phone. Well, okay. Let's see.
Welcome and
I don't think I did it right.
Okay. Where's your number?
9 first, okay.
What's this here?
Get rid of that. You got an extra number in there?
Yeah, it's a one.
One, okay. All right. Thank you.
hello.
Hello, is this Julie?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. I'm going to put the microphone near the speaker on the phone so that everybody else can hear you too.
Okay,
All right, can you hear okay?
I
Everybody?
can.
All right. Well, Julie, we're sorry that your item on the agenda is late, and we hope you're feeling okay.
Well, thank you. I actually have to have shoulder surgery tomorrow, so I'm under strict, I have to quarantine. So I'm really sorry that I wasn't there for your previous discussion, although I was watching on YouTube. So I listened to that with interest. I'm wondering, did you all get a copy of the letter that I wrote with some details about each of those organizations? I'm just curious before I do my report.
Yes, we did.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. Great. Well, as you know, we're in a terrible situation as far as the tourism industry goes. We have been, I say we, I mean the industry has been devastated more so than any other industry in the nation and in our state. We're following suit. And so I've been sending out reports every couple of weeks just to keep people apprised kind of where we are, what I'm seeing, what the trends are looking like. And I just wanted to take a chance in front of you, sort of from my kitchen table, to walk you through some of the things that are happening and just to make sure that you're clear. And also if there's, if you have any questions or suggestions, things that I can be doing better to try to alleviate some of the stress and difficulty that some of our hoteliers, all of our hoteliers and our restaurants have been experiencing. So in a report that I sent you, I'm just going to kind of walk through this just a little bit for you. I mentioned in there that we received our April occupancy numbers, and those occupancy numbers reflect the number of hotel rooms that are available in a month's time, and then how many of them are rented during that time. And so last month in March, I was really sad because our numbers went clear down to 41.6%. But in April, our hotels reported 24.7% occupancy. A year ago in April, our occupancy was 53.9%, which is even a little bit low for a normal April. So we're seeing, this is just like if you can hear the toilet flush, that's what's flushing right now. Just that number for occupancy is horrifying. On top of that, the average room rate that the hotels were able to charge was only just over $68 a night. A year ago, it was $90 a night. So we're renting less rooms, but we're getting a lot less money for each room. So that's 24% lower amount of money that we're getting per room than we were last year at this time. And another number that is important to the tourism industry is shortened by saying RevPAR, which stands for revenue per available room. And so you take the total number of hotel rooms that are rented,
So, and you times it by the average room rate, and then you divide that by the total number of hotel rooms. And if I were you, I would just be sitting there with glazed eyes because I'm not a good visualizer like that. But the moral of the story is, let me tell you what that number was last year. It was $48.86 per room, and for the RevPAR. This year, $16.93. So we're just all together. This is pretty miserable. And just so you're clear, on the transient room tax collection, we are usually a couple of months behind because by the time they file their taxes, the monthly taxes that are in April, that you see in April, are actually reflecting what was collected, what actually was rented in February. So we have some people who pay on a quarterly basis, so they be paying in April for the first quarter, but most everyone is paying on a monthly basis. So you can't look at the numbers in April for collections and go, oh, yay, April's doing great, or April's doing terrible, because it's reflecting 2 months previously. So in April, our TRT collection was over $44,000, but we're not gonna see the hit of this until at least our May collections at the end of this month, because that will start to reflect what was actually done in March. So I took the number of rooms that we had rented in April, and I times them by the number of how much was available, or how much they charged per room, so I could figure out the transient room tax. And that's, as you know, excuse me, the 4.25% that's collected on every hotel room, that tax. So where we're going to really see that is in June, when we see those payments coming in, because they are reflecting April. Does that make sense to everyone?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. So in my report, as I kind of just wanted to kind of forecast, if I take those numbers, last year in June we collected $57,000. This year, the number is going to be more like 15. So that's a huge drop, as you can see. I also have some concerns because we get a report every month that tells us which hotel has paid and how much they have paid. And this last month, we had several people who pay regularly. I mean, they're just like clockwork every month, didn't pay at all. And so we may see some residual effects of like a lack of cash flow. I'm kind of wondering if that's why they didn't pay their taxes. And I haven't called to ask them that because, you know, the tax commission for the state's pretty lenient about how long it takes you. And I don't want them to feel like I'm interrogating them or whatever, because, but I'm just saying that I think there may be a cash flow issue, and so we're going to maybe have a worse time collecting transient room taxes than even what we're projecting. It might even be lower than that. So that's kind of what we're looking at that way. As far as restaurants go, John, you made a comment earlier in the RAPS tax discussion about locals eating at restaurants, and I agree with you. Let me just share with you that one statistic the National Restaurant Association has given us is that anywhere you go in the United States at any given time, about 26% of the restaurant, of the food being consumed at restaurants is by a tourist. So that's the same nationwide. So I think that you're right. Like the majority of people who are eating are our local residents. But I hope you've heard some of my commercials on the radio, and some of the efforts that we've been making is to save our restaurants. And so from the beginning of when things happened and there was the shutdown, I've been really active in supporting, at first Justin Hamilton and his free delivery service, but I've launched my own radio campaigns encouraging people to be willing to pick up or take curbside and now to dine in. And we're doing everything we can to try to help those restaurants. We don't have a restaurant association here in Cache Valley, but now we kind of do, because the first days that this even started happening, I had my staff call every single restaurant in the county, and there's actually more than 120 of them. And so we have email addresses for all of those managers, and now I've been communicating with them on a regular basis with information that we've received from everything from how to get PPP loans to, other ideas of how we can put out the information about their discounts and their deals and update their hours. And we're making that really dynamic on our website so that it is a source people can turn to. And I've never really advertised in the Cache Valley market before. And the reason is because our funding really comes from people staying in hotels. And since people in Cache Valley don't always stay in hotels, I haven't advertised here. But with this weird COVID, I really have plunged some money into the market, advertising staycations now so that people will come and stay in our hotels, eating out, fun activities that you can do. And I got so tired of in these uncertain time ads that I made my own. And if you haven't heard them, I've sent a few samples to you, but they have like Dixieland jazz blasting behind them and all the great things you can do. So hopefully we can find a little bit of a silver lining. So in addition to that, let me see here. Okay, so we had started doing a little bit of advertising in southern Idaho and along the Wasatch Front. Part of that was in conjunction with the Baby Animal Days that was able to be held on Memorial Day weekend. And the Heritage Center told me, Nick Bowen, who's the director there, that they estimate about 60% of their traffic was from out of the area. So I think my advertising on the radio was really what spurred that, and we did have people consequently staying in our hotels. So just so you know, and this is just from people that I have talked to, because I've been kind of trying to keep tabs on several different restaurants and what's going on. In the first few weeks of this, we had restaurants that were saying things like, we are 90% down. We are 80% down. We had this complete panic for these people who had to go from only having dine-in services to shifting their entire paradigm and mindset to have to do takeout. They've never done it before. And I talked to, for example, the Beehive Grill, and they said, we're panicked. We're trying to get a new phone system in here because they only had one line going in and out for people to call to make reservations. But so then what was happening is instead of reservations, people are calling and calling and calling, trying to get food and order food, and they can't answer the calls because they only have one line, so it just rings busy. So, weird challenges like that, then adapting, and now with dine-in opening again, all of a sudden, a lot of these restaurants, unless you're like Juniper and Takeout, are running basically two business models under one roof. And plus we have all of the added expectations and requirements for sanitation, so they have to have a separate staff for sanitation, a separate staff for waiting on tables. It's mind-boggling. And also, one thing I hadn't considered, that their cost for takeout containers, because they had to switch and do so much curbside, some of them are up 25 to 30% on how much they're having to spend than what they normally would do when people are just taking leftovers home from a restaurant. I talked to a local caterer, and people have been really innovative and adapting to what they can do to just keep their heads above water. But I said to him a week and a half ago, I said, how are things going for you, really? And he said, as of right now, I'm down $1 million. $1 million. That's one caterer. And with Small Satellite Conference being pulled this year, we have, one caterer's contract alone was $200,000. Another one was $100,000, and that's only two of them. As people are kind of bouncing back, though, in the the community's been very supportive and for the most part patient. So as I'm talking to the restaurants, they're still reeling, but they are starting to rebound a little bit, and they're saying, hey, things are looking up. We're 30% down from where we were. There are others, like, have you guys been to see any of the lines at, like, Swig? Any of those drink places? They're ridiculous. I think it's like all the moms stuck at home all of a sudden need a dirty Diet Coke. And so those places are making money hand over fist. We also have some interesting drive-through restaurants that have had the their best months ever. And I was talking to the Anniversary Inn manager just 2 days ago, and she said that they are doing very well. And it's because all locals are escaping just for a night away, and so they're going somewhere different than a normal hotel. So they're doing very well. Another trend that we're seeing that's a little bit different is the window where people are booking reservations is very small, like 3 to 6 days, when usually it's been weeks ahead. And so what that indicates is what we anticipated, which is that people this year at least are going to be taking trips that are close to home. And so, they can decide to go from Salt Lake. They can say, hey, let's go to Logan this Friday night, and they just do it, as opposed to planning things out farther along. So I've been working closely with the state, my other partners in the state, and adjusting our marketing plans to be really focused on people who live in the state and just in southeastern Idaho, which has always been our market, but with some more innovative ways to have them consider coming to Logan, whereas before they might have gone longer distances or internationally or whatever. All of our tour bus business is just gone. It's just evaporated. My friend owns Ruby's down at Bryce Canyon. He's lost 98% of his income because all of the Asian and European tour bus groups have gone. And so we're looking at some really big impacts statewide and locally as well. I do think obviously we're going to have a few months where dining, where our restaurant tax collections are lower, but I do have some confidence that that is maybe slower than we'd like to, but is going to rebound. And I've kind of just given you a lot of information. Do you have any questions? Because I can't see you, so I don't know if you're like falling over dead or left to go to get a drink or what's going on.
Well, I don't see anybody with their eyes closed, Julie.
Okay.
In fact, I think they're wide open and in shock.
It is pretty alarming. Last month, Salt Lake City, and they have scads more rooms than we have in hotels. A year ago, they were at 71% occupancy in April. This April, 17% occupancy. So we're talking millions and millions of dollars. But we are, as I mentioned, we're doing what we can. I feel like we've really made some inroads with the restaurants. We're helping them unite. We're going to be able to look forward to helping them more in the future. We're also, working with groups, the conference centers, and just trying to, kind of keep a pulse with what's going on. And what we're seeing and what the state and nation are are starting to forecast is we may see some return by fall. Earlier they were saying, late summer, and that's just proven to be too optimistic. So they're saying late fall, we should see the return of some travel, which is difficult for Cache Valley because late fall is not our strongest season in the first place. But they are hoping by next spring that things will be a lot closer to normal. And just by way of information, for example, I was talking to Shirlene Davis, who is the head of conferencing at Riverwoods. I was talking to her today, and she said because of the news of the spike in COVID in Cache Valley, she had 2 different clients who had large conferences that were going to be held there clear in July who called today and canceled. So it really is a volatile environment. It's difficult to know when to advertise and what message to give because we don't want to look irresponsible, but at the same time, we want people to remember us when they're ready to travel. So we're walking a fine line. We're being prepared, having all of our marketing materials ready. So when the time is right, then we will just dive right in there. Okay, there you go.
Thank you, Julie. Any questions from the council for Julie?
I liked your little radio things, the samples you gave us where you could push the button.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I did notice, let me just say, I read over the minutes from your last meeting, and there was a question raised in there about whether or not summer citizens pay transient room tax. And the way that transient room tax works is if you stay at a property or a hotel or a campsite for longer than 30 days, you are no longer considered transient. So tax is not collected on people who are here in the valley for whatever reason if they're here longer than 30 days. So if the summer citizens are coming and staying in a hotel for 2 to 3 weeks or 1 to 3 weeks or whatever, transient room tax is collected. But those who are staying in apartments and are here for several months do not pay transient room tax.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Can I just say Julie does a really good job, and I've been impressed as I've worked with her and appreciate her creative genius and her ability to market our valley. I think she does a great job.
Thank you.
Yep, and that's seconded, and I think we all agree. We're
Thank you.
blessed to
Please,
have you.
please don't hesitate. If you have other, if you have some brainstorm out of the box, if you think of things that we could be doing or any angles that we could, capture, just encouraging people to get out and be in our community and enjoy it, please email me. Please let me know, because I'm happy to be responsive to that and see what we can do. We can use all the help we can get right now.
Thank you. And
You're welcome.
best of luck on your surgery. We hope it goes well.
Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Okay. Well, we have some, if I can get situated here, we have some pending actions here to take care of. Resolution 2020-10, declaring the county's intent to pick up Tier 2 public safety employees' contributions to the Utah State Retirement System. We discussed that last meeting, and we're just waiting for you to come to the podium and update us.
I'm just here to answer some questions. I'm hoping that the homework I sent you, you were able to do over the last couple of weeks. I sent you the PowerPoint with the additional information that John requested on the 401k contribution for public employees if we were to pick up the match for the public safety employees, as well as the webinar presentation that URS gave and the quick snippet of the newsletter. So those are the items that were sent to you. I do have the PowerPoint presentation if you'd like me to bring it up, but otherwise, if you feel like you're comfortable with the information, I can answer any questions that you may have. The sheriff is also here if you have any questions as well.
Any questions at all? I guess.
Okay.
Everybody's satisfied.
All right.
I still question, I know where we come from, I understand it, all that, and it's all based on a 20-year, and I know we gotta hire new people, but I think once they extend past 20, I think there should be a different arrangement. I'm sorry.
And I guess that would be something to talk to the legislature about and the URS system.
I know what you're saying.
Please.
I can tell you, I feel your frustration with the URS, and I 100% understand where you're coming from and the concern you have with how these things keep rising and rising and rising as it comes to retirement. I tried to get a bill run last year, and we discussed that about the retirement system, and I'm as frustrated and confused with the URS as everybody else is. Whatever the URS tells the legislature, whatever the URS tells me, whatever they tell you, for whatever reason, it's like written in stone right up there next to the 10 Commandments. If the URS says it happens and this is what it is, they expect all of us will just say, okay, we agree, that's what the URS says. During the retirement bill that I had Representative Potter run for me, all I simply did was ask them to put some numbers together, and their first answer was, well, that's too expensive. Well, it's not their job to determine what's too expensive. It's their job to give some numbers that folks who need to make decisions and fund these programs for our law enforcement and public safety and everybody else, it's their job to determine what's too expensive and what's not too expensive. The problem with this Tier 2 public safety, and I'll speak for my office because that's the piece that I know. I think, Amy, correct me my numbers, but I got 66 people, is that correct? 66 people on the Tier 2 retirement, and I've got about equally or a few more people that are on the Tier 1. Those who are on Tier 2 without the tweak, what they're asking for now, and those that are on the Tier 1, this is no impact to them at all. We hired all these folks on the Tier 2, and they understood it was a 25-year retirement at 37.5%. They understood what the game was when they took the job, but now they're being asked to make the same wage, do the same work with this virtually a few years difference in time, and now somebody who's on the unhybrid Tier 2 or the Tier 1, they're paying one thing, and it's like the 66 folks that I have that are on the Tier 2, they're being penalized for starting out and having the game changed in the middle of the ball game. So I'm as frustrated as you are. I would hope that the county would recognize that those are some conflicts, and it's not conflicts that I created. It's certainly not conflicts that our county, your good county council members and county executive or a county attorney or anybody created the conflict. It's not the legislatures that created the conflict. Well, I take that back. It is their fault. Most of it. I take it back because they don't want to understand how the URS works. They just take whatever the URS says is that's just what it is and what it has to be. And there's not a lot of argument with the URS or enough detail that's given, I don't believe, to the legislatures, or really where rubber meets the road is back to the city council and the county councils, the folks who have to fund the decisions that they make. So I feel for you, and I apologize that it's come to this again. We met at our meeting a month or so ago, and I think we had a pretty good understanding of it. Who's to say the legislature doesn't say, okay, we did this last year at 2.5%, now we want 7%. And the year after that is 10%, and the year after that is 20%. I mean, where does their outreach stop? When we had our meeting, there was some discussion about, well, why don't we just do the whole thing at 4% or 5%? And I was pretty adamant that, I don't think we should give them ammunition, so to speak, for next year that everybody's just going to roll over and play the URS's games. I think if it's 2.5%, and that's what we have to do right now for the current staff that we have, I think we should fund that piece, but I don't think we should extend it any farther or even plan ahead any farther, because that just it falls into the system that we're all trapped in, that we don't get information. We just get told what the cost is, what the values are, how it's going to work, and you pit 15-year deputies against 12-year guy deputies. And if they change the rules again next year, we're going to pit 6-month guys against 12-year guys. I'm frustrated with it, and I know you guys are too, and you'll make the right decision, and we'll work with what we get. I just hate the thought that we're always the one coming out for money. I mean, we try to do the best we can with the money we're given, and I think we're very frugal, but things like this come up, and to have no control or no say over how these things work or what we have to pay, or why do we have to pay? I mean, the county pays a fortune to the URS. At what point is that your money, the county's money, and not their money to decide how it gets spent or what gets done with it? But that is a fight that I'll never see before my career is over, that it will ever be an answer to the arguments with the URS. But thank you for the consideration and whatever you can do for our current employees who are stuck in the middle and really have a wedge driven between employment, not employment, URS, and all of this. But thank you. That's all I just had to say. My own frustrating and venting comments.
Thank you, Sheriff.
So just a couple of words that I would like to say. I really do appreciate our sheriff's office and all that they do for our community, especially these last couple of weeks. I think that that's been brought to light, and I think that our sheriff's deputies really need to know how much we do support them. I think by considering this employer pickup, that would be a really good morale booster to them, to let them know that we stand behind them, that we support them, and that we appreciate what they're doing. It is a cost to the county, but I really think that in order for us to continue to have good employees and to have good, strong deputies that really uphold what our county values are, that we need to have a benefits package that is good, that they are seeking, and that we are drawing those types of people to be our employees. And so it is a cost to the county, and I do know that. And, you know, to John's point, I'm a public employee. Do I think it's fair or not fair? That's not neither here nor there. But I think that public safety puts their lives on the line. I don't do that in my job, and I think that they deserve that. So that's my little 2 cents as the HR director and supporting our deputies. If you have any questions, we can either make a decision today so that it will go into effect when this decision goes into effect on July 1st, or we can push it off. However, keep in mind that we're not able to retro that back. So on the pay period that includes July 1st, if we haven't made a decision or you haven't made a decision of what you want to do, that will fall to the employee and will be carried forward until a decision is made either way. So that's where we're at. So any questions or anything that I can?
Thank you, Amy.
You're welcome.
I don't see that waiting a month's gonna make any difference. It's not gonna. I think we gotta do it. Gotta bite the bullet whether you like it or you don't like it. I think it's a decent thing to do.
Well, I mean, for me, I got plenty of bones to pick with their retirement system, and I'd love to have some more conversations about that. But in today's world, I don't want any whiff of I'm trying to defund the sheriff's department. So I'm fine to vote for it.
And we're certainly not suggesting that either. Either way, we're not suggesting that. I was worried that may come up in this conversation. This started long before.
Exactly, and that's what I'm saying, you know, you talk about time, and so I'm gonna pass on picking bones on that, because I wanna make sure you're supported 100%.
Well, I'll be in the fight with you with the URS whenever you want to pick it, or I'll pick it and you can help me, but I don't know what the answer is.
We all may be in the ring with you.
But I hope so, because there needs to be some controls and some local say, because it's Cache County, it's Logan City, it's the municipalities and the counties that fund the URS. I think the state employees are about 35, maybe 40% of the entire URS total. So all of us are eating the mistakes and the decisions that they make, and we have a bigger stake, counties have a bigger stake in the URS than the state employees have, and I just don't think any of us get treated fairly with it.
I don't
Okay.
think there's much we can do, other we're just gonna have to fund it, and I would go ahead and make a motion that we pass this resolution and that we fund the other portion of the, I don't even know how to say the right words. Help me out, Amy, what word?
Employee portion.
Employee part of this.
Employer pickup.
The only challenge, and I shouldn't say this as I'm making this motion, I'll say it after, but I'll make a motion that we go ahead and fund it.
Second.
Okay, motion's made and seconded. All in favor?
This is a resolution, right?
Resolution 2020-10.
Do we need to
Waive the rules.
rules? No, because we did last.
Pending action.
I just had one comment, is that I agree with Paul and what you have said and that, but keep in the back of our mind that it will take something out of something else then, when we start hitting budgets.
It does.
You'll have,
Take a tax increase, you don't take anything out.
like I say, it will take out of something else, so, sorry.
No, point well made. Okay, we called for a vote. Was there any against? Okay, it passes.
The only thing that I held off saying is this is only for public safety. This doesn't include the rest of the county workers.
Right.
So that might be a discussion we'll have next year.
Well, I think it's one we should have.
So be aware that that'll probably come around next year, the year after. Enough said.
Thank you. Okay, we have some initial proposals for consideration of action. Ordinance 2020-07, amending the county zoning map, North Pine Canyon Ranch rezone. We had a public hearing on that earlier tonight. It's not something we have to take action on this evening, but I'll open it to the council to see if there's anyone who desires to move that forward at this time.
I think for ordinance 2020-7 for the North Pine Canyon Ranch, I make a motion we waive the rules and approve that ordinance.
I'll second that.
Support the
Okay.
planning commission on that.
All in favor of approving ordinance 2020-07, say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Thank you. Okay, the next item is ordinance 2020-08, amending the Cache County zoning map, Pinnacle Estates LLC rezone. Again, this is initial proposal. We don't have to take action on it tonight, but I'll open it up to any council members who want to take action if so desired.
I'd like to think about this a little bit. I don't know how the others feel, but there's good arguments to be.
I'd like to take a stronger look at it.
And I would just go along with the recommendation of the planning commission,
I'm there with
What, John?
the planning.
That's my thought on it.
That's mine too.
Well, I'll entertain a motion with the waiver of the rules if
I'll
anybody's
make
so
a
inclined.
motion that we waive the rules and deny the rezone.
Second.
Okay, all in favor of denial for ordinance 2020-08, say aye.
Is by denying it, how that's written is,
I denied the rezone.
okay, deny the rezone.
Rezone, right.
Because if we deny the ordinance,
The ordinance was denial, so.
then we need to approve the ordinance.
I guess that's true.
We
No.
gotta
How's that?
No.
Yeah,
The ordinance is written as though it were an approval.
That's right.
So you would need to act to deny the,
the ordinance, okay.
Okay, I was just reading that and it said in here, proceeds, hang on. Go ahead, I thought I read it here that it mentioned that it was to deny.
the planning commission's motion was to, recommendation
Yeah, it was 6-0 to deny.
So pass the ordinance.
deny the ordinance.
Deny the
Right
ordinance.
here, whereas the Cache County Council has determined that it is appropriate for the county to reject the request to rezone the property as described. I'm reading it right off of that.
Ordinance.
We approve that, then we are approving to reject the request to rezone.
No, ordinance 2020-08
08.
says a request to rezone 30.1 acres of property from agriculture A-zone zone to RU2 zone located at. What I want to do is rescind that or deny that rezone.
So your motion was to deny ordinance 2020-08, which would be the ordinance made
Is it
to
right,
rezone.
is it right then?
I'm not sure what you're reading.
I'm reading the ordinance.
Yeah.
It says, whereas the Cache County Council has determined, so we approve this, it says, whereas the Cache County Council has determined that it is appropriate for the county to reject the request to rezone the property as described.
And below it says number 2, adoption of amended.
Okay, that's what when I was reading this here, I said, well, if we pass this, then we are rejecting the rezone.
But his motion was to deny the rezone.
Right, but then that needs to be changed within the ordinance.
Right.
Okay, thank you. Sorry to.
You'll clarify that for us.
We're denying.
Thank you.
We're voting to deny the rezone.
Denying the rezone.
Deny the rezone.
Okay, item 13C, approval of the Cache County.
Would you be able to do that vote, because we never really finished it?
Oh, yeah, we didn't vote on it.
Didn't vote? Okay.
Keep us out of trouble, James.
Yeah, thank you.
The motion should include to make the ordinance language consistent with the council's action here tonight, that it's denying the rezone of that. And with that, that can be amended and signed by the chairman. That's what my recommendation would be, and to take that vote, that should be part of the motion.
I would be more than happy to accept that amendment.
Okay,
or make that the motion.
thank you. Got it. All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Okay. Thank you all. Item 13C, approval of the Cache County Economic Development Strategic Plan. And I, for one, have not had a chance to read through the whole thing yet.
That was a long time ago when we had that. That was 2020
Yeah.
BC before COVID.
We visited this and had a workshop on it in February, so if you need another week or 2 weeks to take a look at it again, one of the recommendation was that an economic development director be hired, and so we do have some funding possibly from the state that we could do that, but if you want to take another couple of weeks to look at it, then it should be on your servers that you can study that for a couple of weeks.
Yeah, we got it.
And if you have any questions, by all means, get in touch with me.
Okay.
We just have to remember to put it on the agenda again because we forgot to do that.
Oh, yeah, it will be.
Okay, 13D is a discussion on the Cache County COVID-19 status. And Craig, you said that you had some information you were going to share with us.
Well, I think there are council members that want to discuss making a recommendation to go to green. And that's up to the council, what you want to do that. In some information that was sent to all of you and to myself today from the Association of Counties, the General Burton, who is the acting director of the State Department of Health, recommends that any requests to the state go through the health director. So if we want to make a request, we would channel that through the health director, and the Board of Health would actually take a look at that. So it's up to you. I'll let you have that discussion. I just want to say that you're all aware of what the current situation is here in the county, and we do have we are looking at probably 40 to 50 cases each day here in the county, new cases, and we have had a lot of increased testing because some of the industries in the county are asking all of their employees to get tested. So that's one reason we're seeing the positive tests spike as high as they have. And so I do think that there are there are a lot of individuals that would like to see us move to the green. But if we do move to a green status, there probably, well, I think that there will be a lot more personal responsibility that will have to be taken by individuals, and that's probably the direction we should go. So I'll let you have that discussion, and whatever your decision is, I will work with the Board of Health and get that information to the director as the chairman of the Board of Health right now. So thank you.
Thank you. Any discussion? Gina, you kind of led out on this initially.
Initially, yeah. It is hard when we do have these cases, but one of the things that has been difficult for me to figure out is the complete lack of balance. And when General Burton talks about the 4 core things, none of those 4 core data points have anything to do with mental health, suicide. They're all having to do with the numbers of COVID. And that really bothers me because there's this whole other side of things going on. As Julie mentioned, the impact to our local business, the impact to our, to our hotels, our restaurants, and the arts is just, it just killed them. And to the economy, that's really important. And, also we've had those numbers on domestic violence. There's also other numbers that they haven't looked at. Studies show that for every percentage point that you lose for unemployment, so every percentage point that unemployment rises, the next year there is an increase of 6% in the rates of death to working males in the next year, within the year's time. There's also an increase, I can't remember the number, it might be 3%, I can't remember, for minorities and young women to have suicidal behavior. So there's this whole other side that I've been completely frustrated from the beginning because it has been completely ignored. And this is for a virus that has a 1% death rate. And I can't help but think, what are we doing? I look at that and I think as we look back on this in the years to come, I think we're going to be shaking our heads and wondering why we did this. And I know that there are a lot of people that are very scared. And I understand that, and it's really hard because everybody has a different set of facts, honestly. You talk to some people on this side of the spectrum, they can rattle off these facts, over here, these facts. I know that when the commission, the committee that our UAC CEO, Brandy Grace, is on, when they made the recommendation to go to green, I know that they studied very carefully numbers. And I was in a meeting with Senate President Adams on Saturday. He told us some of the numbers that they were looking at and why they wanted to go to green with precaution, which I think is legitimately a good idea. Because of these other factors that I've mentioned, and not just looking at the numbers, looking at the big picture in its entirety. He said for 18 to 25-year-olds are unlikely to go to the hospital if they get this. The problem is with the 65-year-olds who have health conditions, 70% of them go to the hospital. So they wanted to make sure that we can protect that risk group, which I agree with. I think we need to be really careful with them because they are at a higher risk. He also told us that the majority of deaths are in our nursing homes, and so that's another area that we would need to do, protect those vulnerable people. But with a 1.1% fatality rate, I don't understand why here we are in June and we're still in the so-called yellow phase. People can be responsible for their own health. That's what America is all about. It's about taking personal responsibility. And I think it's time for government to let people take personal responsibility. I don't know what else to say, but it's just been a frustrating experience to me to watch just the sole focus on this virus and not the other things that are going on with it. Oh, by the way, the studies that I cited were from Duke University. So that would be my issue about why I think we need to go to green with precaution, you know, of protecting that high risk group. And I wanted to point out too that with a 1% chance of death with this, there's a 1 in 7 chance of dying of cancer. There's a 1 in 25 chance, all preventable causes of death. You're more likely to be killed in a car accident than to die of COVID in Utah. And I think those are things that we need to have a little perspective and kind of really look at the numbers. And so if the state commission that we have our UAC president and President Adams on recommends going green, and I know they've studied this really hard, then I stand by that and I agree with them. However unpopular that may be with a large number of people.
Well stated, thank you.
I'm probably the other way, but I'm the old geezer that's gonna catch.
Where's your mask?
But that, my problem is whether it was right or wrong originally, we've now put in how much time into it. In 2 more weeks, 14 days, the people that have been quarantined, that will be over. Hopefully, the rates are going down. I think by saying, yeah, let's go green today, I think we're saying, well, and maybe we did screw up, I don't know. But we're saying numbers don't matter. Because we went yellow because we had low numbers, now we're gonna go green because we got high numbers of people infected.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm not gonna eat out at a restaurant. I don't think older people are gonna eat out at a restaurant anyway. For a year, we're all scared we're gonna die. And that's a joke, but at the same time, you know, when you say you can die in a car accident, we do that your whole life. We're talking about getting exposed in a 6-month period. Those aren't fair comparisons, but I think that the rest home and the others are.
I don't know about the rest of you, but I'm tired of being locked up and I'm tired of running around in fear and I'm tired of it. I'm more than let's get the herd vaccination over with. I might be one of those that die. I've lived a good life. Let's go on with life.
I work.
That's being pretty pretty casual, it's also being pretty bold, but that's the way I feel about it, and I am in the high-risk group.
I work with a lot of people in the high-risk group, and they are the ones that are getting out where I'm at. They're the one, I work for a gym, they're the ones coming back to the gym. They're the ones that are tired of being
Locked up.
Locked
and
up.
Actually, they're scared.
I don't think they're scared.
Well, maybe
The ones I've talked to are not scared. They're just tired of it. I asked one of my clients the other day, I said, what do you think of this, all this stuff? And he says, I choose to come out and get involved. He says, what scares me more is the way people are treating each other. He says, that's what scares me. And he said, and he's 83 years old. And he says, I choose to get out and live my life. And I think, you know, we are to a point that's where people are. They're tired. They're tired of being locked up. They're tired, and I agree with Gina. Depression and anxiety are really taking hold. I have a family member that she has anxiety and depression, and what is causing it at this point right now? She can't even visit her children at the first, her children and grandchildren. And when she was able to finally to visit them, or even at a distance get to see them, she was a whole different person, a whole different person. So I think that we need to really take these things into consideration on it.
Mr. Chairman?
All right, yes, Sharon?
Mind if I make a comment?
No, please do.
Having family that works in the healthcare industry, was my understanding, could be right, could be wrong, but a lot of the restrictions were to contain this so that hospitals could not be overwhelmed. You know, it doesn't matter how tired we are of it, we have to consider those healthcare workers that are trying to care for these people, and you can't overwhelm the hospitals because they only have so much space devoted to, you know, IC units, etc. And in my mind, that was the major reason for trying to contain it.
Thank you. Yes, Dave?
There's a couple things here. One really concerns me is where in this state and even in the nation, where have we given so much power to unelected individuals? You mentioned about, well, Craig, you mentioned right there that we have no say. We could just send the letter off and they'll take it into advisement by the Board of Health.
No, I think that you do have a say.
Okay.
Council has a say. That was evidenced by, you know, your desire to go to yellow.
And I think that is critical. That is critical that, you know, the elected officials, you know, you can listen to the science, listen to the doctors and everything, but then we need to live by the decision, whatever is made. Elected in or elected out. But even at that, there's a couple other things. We live in risk. Every day, everything that we do, wherever we go, whatever we do, there is levels of risk. Gina brought that up. And I think that, to me, there are such high risk. I know of people that have COVID and they're going, I got COVID. And then nothing's different in my life. I just have it. There's absolutely, you know, but yet they were tested. They got the swabs, they were tested, they have it, but they're not exhibiting any kind of symptoms. Yet, which happens to everybody, which happens to the whole herd, right?
That's right.
So I bring that up. And the other thing that I think what's happening here is when we're talking about health and everything is that we are taking away, and I think that we are taking away something I think is more valuable than blue, green, red, or whatever we decide to do, is that we are not allowing us to, what Gina mentioned, we need to empower the people. We need to, you know, give personal responsibility back to them. Personal responsibility and abilities to make decisions, to me, that's the value of self-worth. And when you start pulling that away from people, Therefore, you get suicide. Therefore, you get people that just aren't feeling good about themselves, whatever it may be. They need to have that choice. But they also, you know, if you share and educate, then they make the choice. If they feel they are vulnerable, they know their circumstances, they choose not to, terrific. That is their choice. Okay? The other thing is these guidelines that were sent out, and everything I've ever read, it just said guidelines. I never once have read a document saying it says law. You know, it's to me, they were guidelines that we are, you know, that, hey, you look at those guidelines, oh, that makes common sense, I'll do that, you know, again, by my choice. And so I think we're at that point to where with that same responsibility that we educate them, go out there and say, here's some guidelines that if you are vulnerable, abide by these guidelines. Okay, we're finding out the hospitalizations aren't up dramatically, even with the spike, are we? No. See, that tells me what we thought was not necessarily true. But what we threw in the fear of people, that's harmful. So I think it's very important that we show some confidence in people in our valley. And we just heard from Julie tonight, that tells me how volatile that entire industry is, that I start looking at stuff like that, and you know, we need to really look ahead in our strategic plan, economics. We need to make sure that we are producing something more than entertainment. We need to make sure that we're producing some hard items that people can use, that will endure anything that comes our way. So we need to make sure that we have a tremendous balance. You know, everything we've talked about tonight, how, oh, it's all about the opera, it's all about, you know, one theme and raps, all this. No, it's not. We've seen just how volatile, you know, one virus has decimated an industry. And I think that if we are building some, you know, have some strong manufacturing, we got to make sure when in our planning and stuff that we always have, you know, that we have a diversity of everything happening versus those poor southern counties right now that are, you know, they've relied 90-something% on tourism, and because they've taken away their ability to produce coal, to produce all these other things that would solidify their county, they've taken that away from them. The state has, the nation has, and so now all of a sudden they're down to nothing. You think we're hurting? They're really hurting down there. So anyway, that's just some thoughts there, and I am in favor of going green. I want to, for one, empower the people with their decisions and move on. How soon? I think that the letter, I think you've got a process possibly that's set up within the next week or so. I think we should easily be there.
The governor's latest thing apparently expires this Friday. Maybe Craig knows that, but I don't know if you guys were on that UAC call today with Lieutenant Governor Cox, but he said that the governor will consider all this information. I'm not sure what information, but and he'll think about whether the state can go to green. He said it was these spikes that stopped it from happening last time is what he related to us. But I could frankly see him sending the rest of the state to green and leaving us at yellow because of what we've had. But I think that we need to open back up. We need to get out and get going, and we can protect the vulnerable, and people can take responsibility for their own health. I think it's totally possible, and I have confidence in people. They'll be careful and respectful, and you know. And Dave, I appreciated what you said, because one of the other frustrations I've had is that it's left up to one guy to make that decision, when he said, I'll let you guys do it at the local level, but really that isn't what happened. And I really feel like this should be done at the local level, because we're all different and we all come from different backgrounds. And I think it's a legislative decision at this point, after all these months, not an emergency. I don't see this clear and present danger. I just don't see it with a 1% death rate, and the side effects that are going on. I just don't see it. I think it's too much. And I know that there's going to be some very unhappy people with us, especially, quite frankly, on the liberal side, but I just don't see how the facts really bear this up. I just don't. I think that we need to be opened up with precaution. Let businesses. I was at Texas Roadhouse yesterday, and I was excited. They were full, but they couldn't. There was every other seat, you know. And I thought, you know, it's too bad, because even with all their employees here, they're still only bringing in, you know, half as many people as they could. Their business isn't really fully open. I would love to see those businesses, if they want to, really be able to open up. And if people want to go there with them, open up, let them make that decision. Let the market guide this, rather than government telling people what to do.
Well, thank you all.
Let me just say one thing too, to tag on to what Dave was saying about making things. I'd like to compliment the manufacturing, the businesses that we have in the valley. And I think there's been some highly irresponsible, and I'll put journalism in quotes, locally, with what's going on. And I would call them out, and if they want to quote me in the paper, they can. But they have not done a good job of passing along factual, correct information. There's been a lot of propaganda. Those businesses are the backbone of who we are, and they've been highly responsible in this. And I think by opening to Green, we're sending a message that they have done a good job. They have been responsible. And as a governmental entity, we're not going to force their hand on anything. I'm intentionally sending the message, not wearing the mask. We go Green, I'll put this mask on. You know, because you take some responsibility. But as soon as you're forcing me to do it, I'm not going to do it. Because that's what I believe America is. So, I just needed to say that.
Well, thank you.
Carl, do we need a motion that we can draft this letter to send?
Ask James, do we need a motion, or can we just?
Yeah, I think that's the appropriate method, and if you forward it to the health department, then we'll forward it to the governor's office. When it goes to the state health department, we'll give it to the governor's office. That's the protocol that the governor's put in place. If you want to impact that decision, my recommendation is that you would make a formal motion and follow that through. I know the council's gotten together before and talked about it and shown their support for that request before, and that would be the avenue the council should take.
Therefore, I move that we draft our letter to be sent on to that we go green status of personal responsibility. We ship that and send that off on that request to the governor.
I'll second that.
All right, the motions have been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Are there any opposed? I didn't think there would be. Oh, opposed? Okay.
How many birthdays have you had?
No, I just think weeks aren't gonna matter, it's gonna change much better.
Well, that's how long it'll take for the letter to get there and back.
Okay. Well, thank you all. We have just 3 other items. We have a Nibley Heritage Days Parade on June the 20th at 10 a.m. I plan to be there.
Is Nibley gonna have it?
These are both,
I think so.
they've reached out to us.
Yeah, they're advertising
They're
for
gonna
it.
do it?
The parade, Heritage Days anyway.
Yeah. Must drive
You can
at
put
least
me
20
down,
miles per
Janine.
hour.
I don't know, anybody else?
I'll go if they have it, for Nibley.
Gina, Carl, Gordon.
I'll go if they have it, yeah. I love the parade.
You coming, John?
No.
It's your neighboring community, you know?
I only go to 2 parades. And I love them both, and I hope they have them.
The next one is Hyde Park City Parade, July the 18th. That's a ways away. You can put me down for that one also.
Me too.
I'll go to that.
Janine, I don't know, I didn't say anything, but I'll go to both of those. Just let me know, I'll go ahead and register for them. Okay.
Okay. And we have the County Employee Summer Party on July 22nd.
Can I give you a little background on
Okay.
things I had a department head meeting and just asked for input on what they would like to do for a county party because the aquatic center is closed for remodeling. And I think pretty unanimously, the department heads would like to just have a bunch of food trucks there at the Willow Park, get the food trucks in and have the employees be able to go to whatever food truck they wanted to go to and have dinner, and then we could hand out prizes and different things like that, and kind of make that our county party for this year, if you're okay with that.
Yeah,
You won't be able to cook burgers.
Willow Park or at the event?
They're at the county fairgrounds.
Fairgrounds.
Yeah.
So we won't cook anything.
No, you won't need to cook anything unless you work in a food truck. And then you can cook.
Except we get a job.
Can we move those grills to the food truck?
I kind of like that.
Yeah, and that's,
You want to
I'll
support
miss- I'll
the
miss
food trucks?
Not, they don't like your hamburgers, it's really.
they wanted to support the local businesses.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, I really do.
Sounds good.
Okay, we'll plan that way. If you have recommendations for a food truck that you really want to see there,
Morty's.
let us know. Okay. Morty's,
How
sounds
many do
good.
we have? Where are food trucks? Well, when I ever sees the coop in the scoop or something.
The Coop?
Chicken and get
The Coop is one that was been recommended too. I haven't ever eaten there, so I don't know.
Just see it there.
I always run out of chicken before I can get there, so if we get them, I'm gonna have to get in line.
Is it On the Hook? There's another one? It's fish. I think they're from out of the valley. But if we can get Carrie Ann's there, that's gonna be the icing on the cake.
Okay, thank you, Craig.
Trailers, so we may be able to get Carrie Ann's there. What's
the barbecue? The barbecue.
There's a barbecue guy that's got one.
Rolling West,
Yeah, they're from out there, Wellsville area or something? Yeah, that's a good one.
Roger Knorr.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They've actually catered for us, haven't they?
they did.
Yeah.
Yeah, Rolling West.
That's
They catered for the county party about 4 years ago. We're still paying for it, but. No, it was really good, but they're a little more expensive, so,
Yeah, we don't need to get it.
yeah.
Invite them all from Utah and call it Eat Your Way Through Utah.
Okay. All right.
Can we
Well,
do karaoke?
that's what the plan is, so.
Can we do karaoke?
Karaoke? You want to do karaoke? I think we've got one department head that would feel really bad if we didn't do karaoke, so. I think we're gonna require, I think we're gonna require the chief deputy executive to do karaoke this year. As an introduction.
You know what? We don't feel bad.
Boy, I'm glad we're not.
Okay, I'm sorry to keep moving things along. I've got a class I have to get ready to teach at 8 o'clock. So, any other reports from council members? Barbara?
Yeah, just to let you know that we are rescheduling the cash celebration of women for August 26th. We're still in the planning stages of that, and I'll keep you updated on that. And I just have one thing to say. I'm concerned about the reporting of the COVID cases, and I'm just going by word of mouth and what I've heard. And I'm not saying it's happening here in the valley, but I've heard a couple different cases where people have died and they've attributed it to COVID, but it really was actually a heart attack or something like that. So I'm thinking maybe these numbers are being skewed a little bit too on some of this, because the one that was reported as a COVID and was actually a heart attack was some friends of ours, and they went right back to it, you know. So I'm wondering about all the reporting myself on that.
Chairman, I think it's imperative. What's been said tonight, information is really important. I talked to Jenny Jukes, who works as a state PIO, and she's from Richmond, or from the Valley. I can't remember if it's Richmond or not, but she had mentioned, this goes along with Barbara's comments, there's not been one death, and this is reported to me a week and a half ago when I was on the phone with her.
that there hasn't been a serious underlying health issue. That information has been given to media. It's not always reported.
Right.
So that's important for people as they go about their lives, that if you have a serious underlying health issue, you probably should be more careful, unless you don't care about it. But for folks who are healthy and can make decisions, and we haven't had those types of deaths, and that's kind of what you feel when you watch the media, is that we're all very, very vulnerable to it. And there are some who are, but that's a statistic that was given to me by Jenny Jukes a week and a half ago.
James,
Thank
can
you.
I follow up a question with that? For Cache County, we have that one death, but it was from a person who didn't live here, didn't contract the disease here, and didn't pass away here, correct?
They didn't die here either.
So how is it that we end up with that number here, and is it also being duplicated there?
He's a resident.
Because of the resident, so it's not counted again where it actually happened, it's just counted here? Okay,
The same with the death that was in Box Elder County. We've had
Okay.
2 in our district, and they contracted the disease and actually passed away outside. Or at least that individual passed away outside the state.
thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Meeting adjourned.
Oh, I have a question. Do you want me to write the letter?
Oh, would you mind?
I'd be happy
You worked on the last one and it
Yes,
worked out
if
really
the council
well.
would like me to,
So,
I'd be happy to.
any opposition to that?
How that actually works is, if you go to the hospital, one guy was waiting for a heart, one guy was sugar diabetes, but they go into the hospital, they get checked in with COVID, because they now have it. When they died, it didn't matter what, they had COVID, so it's reported as COVID. Now, the fact that they may have died in a week later doesn't fit into the equation, it's just, that's why it's reported that way.
There's also finances that are attached to those code issues. So that's where we can't have that.
Okay. Well, shall we adjourn? So done.
Well, the good news is, after this meeting, we're going to get to know a lot more kids.